I pretended to have amnesia after my accident to see who would try to manipulate me, and it ended my marriage. The semi-truck hit my Honda at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember because I was staring at my dashboard clock, wondering if I had enough time to grab groceries before picking up my daughter from daycare. The impact sent me spinning across 3 lanes of traffic before everything went black. When I woke up in the hospital 3 days later, the first thing I heard was my husband Garrett whispering to someone in the hallway. "The insurance payout will be substantial," he said, "especially with the head injury. She'll need long-term care." I kept my eyes closed and listened through the fog of pain medication. "Are you sure she doesn't remember anything?" The voice belonged to my sister-in-law, Patricia. Doctor said it could be months before her memory comes back, if it ever does. Something cold settled in my stomach. The way he said, "if it ever does," sounded almost hopeful. That's when I made the decision that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life. I would pretend the amnesia was worse than it actually was. My memory was mostly intact, just some gaps around the accident itself. But when the neurologist asked if I remembered my husband, I stared at Garrett blankly. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I don't. Who are you?" The relief that flashed across his face before he composed himself into concerned husband mode told me everything I needed to know. For 2 weeks, I played the part perfectly. I let them explain my life to me like I was a stranger living in my own skin. Garrett was so patient, so caring in front of the medical staff. He brought me flowers, held my hand during doctor visits, spoke in soft, reassuring tones. "We've been married 8 years, he said, stroking my hair. "You're an amazing mother to Zoe. She's 5. But at home, when he thought I was sleeping, I heard him on phone calls I wasn't supposed to understand. She doesn't remember the business account, he told someone, or the house papers I had her sign. My best friend Coral visited daily, tears in her eyes as she showed me photo after photo, trying to trigger my memory. She genuinely believed she was helping me piece my life back together. Then Patricia started coming around more often. "You should know," she said during one visit. "Before the accident, you and Garrett were having problems. You'd been talking about divorce." I blinked slowly, playing confused. "I was? Oh yes. You called me crying just last week, said you'd found some documents that worried you." This was news to me. I'd never called Patricia crying about anything. We barely spoke. "What kind of documents?" Patricia exchanged a look with Garrett. "Financial stuff. You thought Garrett was hiding money from you, but you were just confused, sweetie. The stress of everything was getting to you." I nodded like this made sense, but my mind was racing. What documents? What money? That night, I waited until Garrett was snoring, then carefully searched his home office. In a locked drawer, I knew he kept client files. I found a folder labeled with my name. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out, dated 2 days before my accident. Garrett was filing for divorce and claiming I was mentally unstable. There were fabricated medical records suggesting I'd been having psychological episodes. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the insurance policy he'd taken out on me 6 months ago, $2 million. And at the bottom of the stack, a text thread between him and Patricia. "Once the amnesia story runs its course, we move to phase 2. What if she remembers? She won't be around long enough for that to matter." My hands shook as I photographed everything with my phone. I had to be careful. One wrong move and I'd be dead. But I needed to understand how deep this went. How long had they been planning this? I kept digging through the files, my heart pounding with each discovery. Bank statements showing he'd been siphoning money from our joint accounts for over a year. A second life insurance policy I'd never heard of, worth another $1 million. Emails with Patricia discussing my deteriorating mental state, dating back 8 months. They'd been laying groundwork for this for almost a year. In the very back of the folder, I found something that made my blood run cold. A medical report from my annual physical, but the results had been altered. Someone had added notes about depression, anxiety, and concerning psychological episodes that never happened. My own doctor's signature had been forged. The next morning, I continued my act while planning my escape. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd done. I called my mom, playing up the confusion. "Mom, Garrett says I signed some papers about the house? I don't remember." "Oh, honey," she said, her voice tight with worry. "You called me about that. You were so upset. Said Garrett had you sign documents when you were on those pain medications after your dental surgery. You thought something was wrong, but couldn't prove it." The dental surgery. 3 months ago, I'd had my wisdom teeth removed. Garrett had been so attentive, bringing me medication on a strict schedule, making sure I rested, keeping visitors away so I could heal properly. Now I realized he'd been drugging me into compliance. "What did I sign, Mom?" "You weren't sure. Something about transferring the house into both your names, but you already owned it together. And some business papers. You said you felt foggy and confused when you signed them, like you were watching yourself from outside your body." The way she described it made me sick. He'd been systematically drugging me during my recovery, taking advantage of my vulnerability to steal everything I owned. After we hung up, I looked up the business papers online using our home computer. Garrett had transferred our joint accounts into his name only, used my signature to take out massive loans against the house, and somehow gotten power of attorney over all my assets. He'd been systematically stealing from me for months, and I'd been too trusting to notice. That afternoon, Coral brought Zoe for a visit. My daughter ran to me, and for a moment, I almost broke character. She was so small, so trusting. "Mommy, do you remember our secret song?" she asked, climbing into my lap. I wanted to say yes, wanted to sing "You Are My Sunshine" with her like we did every bedtime, but I just smiled sadly and shook my head. Zoe's face crumpled. "It's okay, baby," Coral said quickly. "Mommy's brain is just tired. She'll remember soon." But as I watched Zoe throughout the visit, I noticed something disturbing. She kept glancing at Garrett nervously, like she was afraid of him. When he reached for her, she moved closer to me, pressing her small body against mine protectively. "Daddy, can we go home soon?" she whispered to me, not him. Garrett's jaw tensed. "We'll leave when Mommy gets tired, sweetheart." But Zoe shook her head. "I want to go to Grandma's house, with Mommy." The look that crossed Garrett's face was pure rage, quickly masked when he noticed Coral watching. After they left, I asked Garrett about Zoe's behavior. Has she been having any problems? She seemed scared. His jaw tensed again. "She's been acting out since the accident. Saying strange things. Kids her age don't understand trauma. They make up stories to cope." "What kind of strange things?" "Nothing important. Just confused memories. Her therapist says it's normal." "Therapist?" Zoe was seeing a therapist? This was the first I'd heard of it. "What therapist?" "Dr. Brennan. I thought it would help her process everything, with your condition and all." That night, I called Zoe's daycare director, pretending to be checking on my daughter's adjustment since my accident. "Oh, we've been so worried about Zoe," Mrs. Holloway said. "She's been telling us some very concerning stories about her daddy. We weren't sure if we should call child services." My blood ran cold. "What kind of stories?" "She says daddy gets angry when you're asleep, that he talks on the phone about making you go away permanently." She's only 5, so we assumed it was her way of processing your accident, but the details are quite specific. "Has she said anything else?" "She drew a picture last week. It showed 3 people, you, her, and daddy. But you were under the ground and daddy was smiling. When we asked her about it, she said daddy told her you might go live with the angels soon, like her goldfish did." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. "She also told us that daddy has been giving you special medicine that makes you sleepy, and that he talks to Aunt Patricia about how much money they'll have when you're gone." After I hung up, I sat in the dark bathroom, shaking and trying not to vomit. Garrett wasn't just planning to kill me, he was preparing our 5-year-old daughter for it, telling her I was going to die soon, making her complicit in her own mother's murder. What kind of monster does that to a child? The next few days, I watched him more carefully. He'd increased my pain medication without telling me, always bringing it with water and standing there until I swallowed the pills. I started palming them instead, hiding them under my tongue until he left, then spitting them out and flushing them down the sink. Without the constant fog of medication, I could think more clearly, and what I saw terrified me. Garrett's behavior became more brazen. He brought home legal documents for me to sign almost daily, claiming they were insurance forms or medical releases. "The adjuster needs these for your claim," he said, guiding my hand to sign. "And this one is for your therapy appointments." I pretended to struggle with holding the pen, taking my time to read while playing confused. They weren't insurance forms. They were papers making him my sole beneficiary and giving him complete control over any settlement money. Another was a DNR order, instructing medical staff not to resuscitate me if my condition deteriorated. I signed them anyway, playing my part while photographing each document with my phone when he wasn't looking. I needed him to think his plan was working. But I also started my own plan. I called my college roommate Meredith, who was now a detective in another state. "Mir, I need help, but I need you to keep this completely confidential. I think my husband is trying to kill me." I told her everything, sent her photos of all the documents. She was quiet for a long time. "Jesus Christ," she finally said. "How long do you think you have?" "Not long. He's getting impatient. And there's something else. I think he caused the accident." I'd been thinking about this for days. The truck that hit me had run a red light, but the driver claimed his brakes failed. The police report said it was mechanical failure. Case closed. What if they didn't fail naturally? "I need you to look into the trucking company and check if Garrett has any connections to the driver." Meredith called me back within hours. The trucking company is owned by Patricia's husband, Leonard Voss. And get this, the driver, a guy named Danny Reeves, was paid $50,000 the day after your accident, officially for emotional trauma counseling, but the payment came from an account linked to Garrett's business. They'd tried to kill me once already. The accident wasn't an accident at all. "There's more," Meredith continued. "I ran a background check on this Danny Reeves. He's got priors for vehicular assault and insurance fraud. This isn't his first brake failure." I felt sick. They'd hired a professional to murder me, and when it didn't work, they'd shifted to plan B. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. "Keep playing dead for a few more days. I'm driving down tonight with a surveillance team. We need to catch them in the act." That night, I heard Garrett on the phone with Patricia again. "She's signing everything. The doctors say her cognitive function is severely impaired. It's perfect. When do we move forward with the next phase?" "Soon. I'm increasing her medication tonight. Dr. Chen says a few more weeks of the current dose and it'll look like complications from the head injury." Dr. Chen? My neurologist hadn't prescribed any new medications. I'd been reading all my medical records during follow-up appointments. "What did you tell him?" Patricia asked. "That she's been having seizures at home, violent ones. I showed him videos I made with my phone, really just her sleeping. But I told him she was convulsing. He's concerned about brain swelling. They were creating fake medical evidence to justify my death. And the insurance will pay out? Both policies. Plus the malpractice suit against the hospital for failing to catch the brain damage early enough. We're looking at $4 million, minimum." I realized they weren't just planning to overdose me. They were planning to make it look like medical negligence so they could sue for even more money. The next morning, I told Garrett I was feeling worse. "My head hurts so much," I whimpered, "and I keep getting confused. I couldn't remember how to make coffee." His eyes lit up. "I'll call Dr. Chen. Maybe we need to adjust your treatment." "I'm scared, Garrett. What if I'm dying?" He actually smiled. It was subtle, but I saw it. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll take care of everything." That afternoon, Dr. Chen made a house call. Highly unusual. But Garrett had convinced him I was too fragile to travel to his office. "I understand you've been having seizures?" Dr. Chen asked, examining me. I nodded weakly. "Garrett has the videos on his phone. Dr. Chen watched the footage while I lay on the couch, trying to look as pathetic as possible. What I saw on his screen made me want to scream. Garrett had filmed me sleeping after giving me extra medication, then added shaking camera movements and dubbed in audio of someone having a seizure. It was completely fabricated, but it looked convincing. "This is very concerning," Dr. Chen said. "We may need to consider more aggressive treatment." By aggressive treatment, I knew he meant stronger medications that would eventually stop my heart. "I want to increase your current prescription and add something for the seizures," he continued, writing notes in my chart. "This should help control the episodes." After he left, Garrett was practically vibrating with excitement. "Dr. Chen says the new medication should help with your symptoms," he told me, bringing me a glass of water and 3 pills instead of the usual 2. "The doctor said I need to take these?" "Yes, sweetheart. They'll help with the seizures." I palmed all 3 pills, but this time I noticed they were different. Small white pills I didn't recognize, along with something that looked like my regular pain medication but was a different color. After he left the room, I looked up the white pills online. Digoxin, a heart medication that could cause cardiac arrest in someone who didn't have heart problems. The other pill wasn't pain medication at all. It was a powerful sedative used in surgical procedures. He was done waiting. Tonight was the night. I called Meredith immediately. "It's happening tonight. He just gave me something that could kill me within hours. I'm already positioned outside with backup. Can you get Zoe and get out of the house?" "I don't know. He's watching me constantly now. And if I try to leave, he'll know something's wrong." "What about Zoe? Is she safe?" I looked toward the living room where Zoe was coloring at her little table. She looked so small, so vulnerable. "I think so. He needs her to be the grieving daughter. But after I'm dead?" I couldn't finish the thought. What would happen to Zoe once I was gone? Would Garrett raise her, knowing what he'd done? Would he eventually see her as a liability too? "Try to get to a public place," Meredith said. "Bring the pills as evidence." But before I could move, Garrett appeared in the doorway. "How are you feeling?" he asked, studying my face. "Dizzy. Really dizzy." "That's normal. The medication needs time to work. Why don't you lie down?" He guided me to the couch, his hand firm on my arm. Too firm. "Zoe, sweetie, come give mommy a hug before her nap." Zoe ran over and wrapped her tiny arms around my neck. "I love you, mommy," she whispered in my ear. "Don't go to sleep for too long, okay?" The way she said it broke my heart. She knew something was wrong. "I love you too, baby. More than all the stars in the sky." As Garrett settled me on the couch with a blanket, I heard him call someone. "It's done," he said quietly. "She took all 3. How long did you say it would take?" I couldn't hear the response, but Garrett nodded. "Good. I'll call Dr. Chen in about an hour, tell him she had another seizure and stopped breathing." I lay there, pretending to fall into a deep sleep while my heart hammered against my ribs. 20 minutes later, I heard Patricia arrive. "Is she out?" Patricia whispered. "Completely. Her pulse is already getting weaker." This was a lie. I could feel my own pulse, strong and steady, but they thought I was dying. "What about Zoe?" "She's watching TV. I told her mommy needs to sleep for a very long time." "You're sure the pills won't show up in the autopsy?" "Dr. Chen will rule it as brain trauma complications. The digoxin will be undetectable by then, and the sedative will just look like medication for the seizures." They stood over me, watching me die. "How much longer?" Patricia asked. Chen said 30 to 45 minutes. Her breathing should stop first, then cardiac arrest. I forced my breathing to become shallower, more irregular. "There," Garrett said with satisfaction. "It's starting." That's when I heard Meredith's voice outside. "Police, open the door!" Garrett and Patricia froze. "What the hell?" Garrett hissed. The front door burst open and officers flooded in, Meredith leading them. "Nobody move." I opened my eyes and sat up slowly. "Hi, honey," I said to Garrett. "Surprise?" His face went through about 17 different emotions before settling on pure rage. "You lying bitch? Actually, you're the liar. I just pretended to be brain damaged while you planned my murder." Patricia tried to run, but 2 officers blocked her path. "We have everything on tape," Meredith announced, holding up a recording device. "The fake medical reports, the insurance fraud, the conspiracy to commit murder. Oh, and we found your friend Danny Reeves. He's very chatty once you offer him a deal." As they cuffed Garrett, he looked at me with pure hatred. "You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you've done. You'll never be safe." "Actually, I will. Because you're going to prison for the rest of your life." Zoe ran to me, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, are you okay? I thought you were really sleeping forever." I held her tight, breathing in the smell of her hair. "I'm okay, baby. I'm never leaving you." The truth came out piece by piece over the following weeks. Garrett had been embezzling from his clients for years to support gambling debts that had spiraled out of control. When he realized I was getting suspicious about our finances, he'd started planning my murder. The scheme was elaborate. First, he'd drugged me during routine medical procedures to get me to sign papers transferring our assets into his name. Then he'd taken out multiple life insurance policies, forging my signature on the applications. When I started asking questions about missing money, he accelerated the timeline. The truck accident was meant to be fatal, but when I survived, they saw an opportunity to make even more money through insurance fraud and malpractice suits while eliminating the witness to Garrett's crimes. Patricia had convinced her husband to hire Danny Reeves, who specialized in staged accidents, for insurance payouts. They'd been tracking my daily routine for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If I died in the accident, Garrett would have gotten $4 million from insurance policies, full control of my assets, and no investigation into his embezzlement. The fake amnesia had actually saved my life. It gave me time to gather evidence while they thought I was helpless. During the trial, more victims came forward. Garrett had been running similar scams on elderly clients for years, using his position as a financial advisor to manipulate vulnerable people into signing over their assets. One woman, Mrs. Rodriguez, testified that Garrett had convinced her to sign power of attorney papers while she was recovering from hip surgery. He'd told her it was temporary, just to help manage her bills while she healed. Instead, he'd transferred her entire life savings to offshore accounts. Another victim, an 82-year-old widower named Frank, had trusted Garrett to manage his retirement funds. Garrett had been slowly draining the accounts for 3 years, sending Frank fake statements showing steady growth while actually stealing nearly $200,000. The prosecutor called it one of the most sophisticated financial elder abuse schemes she'd ever seen. But the attempted murder charge was what really sealed Garrett's fate. Dr. Chen testified that Garrett had shown him fabricated video evidence of seizures, convincing him to prescribe dangerous medications for a condition I didn't have. Danny Reeves, the truck driver, broke down on the witness stand and admitted he'd been paid to cause the brake failure that nearly killed me. I was supposed to make it look like an accident, he sobbed. But I've never actually killed anyone before. When she survived, I thought maybe it was a sign I should stop. Patricia tried to claim she was just following Garrett's lead, that she didn't know how far he planned to go, but the text messages told a different story. Can't wait to spend that insurance money, she'd written the day after the accident. $2 million will go a long way toward the life we deserve, Garrett had responded. What if she remembers everything? She won't be around long enough for that to matter. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Garrett was sentenced to life in prison without parole for attempted murder, plus 25 years for financial elder abuse, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. Patricia got 20 years as an accessory to attempted murder and fraud. Danny Reeves received 15 years but would be eligible for parole in 8 due to his cooperation. The day the verdict came down, I was sitting in the courthouse with Zoe on my lap. She'd been in therapy, processing everything, but kids are remarkably resilient. Is Daddy going to try to hurt us anymore? She asked. No, baby, he can't hurt anyone anymore. Good. I didn't like pretending to love him. That broke my heart. My 5-year-old had been protecting herself by pretending, just like I had. You never have to pretend with me, okay? You can always tell me the truth. She nodded and went back to coloring in her activity book. Later that evening, Coral came over with takeout and wine. I still can't believe I never saw it, she said, shaking her head. He was so convincing during those hospital visits. I actually felt sorry for him. That's what made him dangerous. He was good at being whatever people needed him to be. How did you know to keep pretending? Most people would have confronted him immediately. I thought about it. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was growing up with an alcoholic father, learning to read people's motivations and hidden agendas. But mostly, I think it was becoming a mother. You develop this protective instinct that overrides everything else, even your own desire for immediate justice. We put Zoe to bed together, then sat on the porch of our new apartment watching the sunset. What now? Coral asked. Now we rebuild. I got back most of the money he stole, plus the insurance settlement from the actual accident. Zoe and I will be fine financially. That's not what I meant. I knew what she meant. Trust, love, marriage, the possibility of ever feeling safe with another person again. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust someone completely again, but I'm not sure that's a bad thing. Maybe being a little more suspicious would have saved me years of being manipulated. It doesn't make you angry? Everything you lost? I considered this, watching Zoe's bedroom light flicker off. I'm not angry about losing Garrett. I'm angry about the time I wasted believing his lies. But that taught me something important about recognizing manipulation. What's that? The most dangerous people are the ones who make you doubt your own instincts, who convince you that what you're seeing isn't real, that what you're feeling isn't valid. I took a sip of wine and thought about all the times I'd questioned myself over the years. I spent months thinking I was paranoid for questioning our finances, for feeling like something was wrong with our relationship. He was so good at making me feel crazy for noticing discrepancies in our bank statements, for wondering why he was suddenly so secretive about his work. But you weren't crazy. No, I wasn't. And I'll never let anyone make me feel that way again. 6 months later, I started a support group for financial abuse survivors. It turns out there are more of us than you'd think. People whose spouses, family members, or financial advisors manipulated them into signing away their security, their assets, their futures. We meet weekly in the community center basement, 12 women and 3 men sharing their stories. There's Diana, whose husband drugged her morning coffee for months while having her sign business documents. There's Robert, whose adult children convinced him to transfer his house into their names for tax purposes, then tried to have him declared incompetent when he objected. There's Maria, whose sister stole her identity and took out credit cards in her name while she was battling cancer. And Janet, whose financial advisor boyfriend convinced her to invest her entire inheritance in fake cryptocurrency accounts. We share our stories, our warning signs, our small victories. We teach each other to trust our instincts again, to recognize the subtle signs of financial manipulation. The key, I tell new members, is understanding that financial abuse is rarely about money. It's about power and control. The money is just the weapon they use to trap you. Last week, a woman named Beverly joined the group. Her adult son had been forging her signature on checks, telling her she was developing dementia and couldn't manage her own affairs. How did you figure it out? She asked me after the meeting. I got suspicious when people started being too helpful, I said. When someone's sudden kindness comes with paperwork, pay attention. She laughed bitterly. That's exactly what happened. He was never that concerned about my well-being before, but suddenly he wanted to help manage all my finances. Trust that feeling. Your instincts are trying to protect you. As I drove home that night, I thought about how different my life looked now. Smaller in some ways. Just me and Zoe in our little apartment instead of the big house, but bigger in others. More honest, more real. Zoe was 8 now, thriving in 3rd grade. She'd started taking art classes and painting pictures of butterflies and rainbows and families of elephants holding tails. Normal kid things. She still asked difficult questions sometimes. "Mommy," she said as I tucked her in that night, "do you think Daddy ever loved us for real?" It was a question that came up occasionally as she processed everything in therapy. I think he loved the idea of us, the way we made him look good to other people. But real love doesn't hurt people the way he hurt us. She nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad he's gone. I don't have to pretend anymore. Me too, sweetheart. We can just be ourselves now. After she fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and opened my laptop. I was writing a book about financial abuse, how to recognize it, document it, escape it safely. The working title was Playing Dead, How Pretending to Be Vulnerable Saved My Life. My editor thought the title was too dramatic, but I disagreed. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let people think you're helpless. And sometimes it's the smartest. Because predators reveal themselves when they think their prey can't fight back. They get careless, overconfident, they make mistakes. In my case, those mistakes saved my life. The book was due to my publisher next month. I'd already received interest from several movie producers, though I wasn't sure I wanted Zoe's story spread across movie screens. More importantly, I'd heard from dozens of other survivors who'd read early excerpts, women who'd recognized their own experiences in my story, men who'd realized they were being financially abused by family members, adult children who'd identified their own manipulative behavior toward aging parents. Your story gave me permission to trust my instincts, one woman wrote. I always knew something was wrong, but everyone told me I was being paranoid. Now I'm getting a divorce and taking back control of my finances. That's why I wrote it. Not for the money or the recognition, but for the people who needed to know they weren't crazy, they weren't paranoid, they weren't alone. Financial abuse thrives in silence and isolation. Predators count on victims being too ashamed to speak up, too confused to trust their own perceptions, too financially dependent to leave. But when we share our stories, we break that silence. We validate each other's experiences. We provide roadmaps for escape. My phone buzzed with a text from Meredith. Saw the news about Garrett's appeal being denied. How are you holding up? I smiled and typed back, fine, he can appeal all he wants from his prison cell. The evidence was overwhelming. And it was. Video surveillance from the hospital parking lot showing him meeting with Danny Reeves the week before the accident. Financial records proving he'd been stealing from clients for years. Audio recordings of him discussing my murder with Patricia. Most damning of all, his own text messages and emails recovered from his phone and computer. Once she's gone, we'll have everything, he'd written to Patricia. $4 million plus the house plus whatever I can squeeze out of the malpractice suit. We'll be set for life. The jury had heard all of it. There was no ambiguity, no room for doubt. Garrett would die in prison, and Patricia would be an old woman when she was finally released. I closed my laptop and checked on Zoe one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, her art supplies scattered across her desk where she'd been working on a project for school. The assignment was to draw a picture of her family. Instead of the traditional house with stick figures, she'd painted an abstract piece. Swirls of purple and gold that somehow conveyed warmth and safety. It's just you and me, she'd explained when showing it to me earlier. But we're enough. Yes, I thought, smoothing her hair. We're more than enough. As I turned off her light, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Garrett, not at Patricia, not even at myself for trusting them. Anger was exhausting. It took energy I needed for rebuilding our lives. Instead, I felt something closer to pity. What kind of emptiness does it take to look at your own child and see only a financial opportunity? What kind of darkness leads someone to drug their spouse into signing away their future? I didn't understand it, and I didn't need to. I just needed to make sure it never happened to us again.